So, as it is an international event that we organize together with our Italian partners, I think you need to switch off your microphones, please, in order for us to...
Sì, Ramona e Assunta, riuscite a silenziare I microfoni gentilmente? Grazie.
In my room is very small.
Yeah, I'm double checking. Thank you.
Okay. So I wanted to say that I would really love to greet you in Romanian. I would say Bună ziua for all of our Romanian students. And then Oriana would definitely greet us in Italian. It's a project that we developed together with our Italian partners. And it is devoted to 10 cultural, linguistic, literary lectures that will be provided 5 by professors from Italy and 5 by professors from Romania. I'm very pleased to have such a great number of participants, and I'm very happy that we succeeded to put everything in place. So I will pass this virtual floor to Oriana and then to our Vice Rector for International Relations, Ramona Mihailă. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorina. Thanks to the pandemic, we are meeting online. I hope that soon we will be meeting in person, all of us. Okay, so thank you very much for the organization. It has been, you have done a lot of work, and so we thank you. La Scuola Superiore per Mediatori Linguistici Internazionale di Benevento is working together with the University in Bucharest. I thank all the participants in Italy. Thanks to the students from the secondary school as well that are present and are interested in the international relationships we are trying to build. In this period in which we cannot travel, it is essential to have contacts and see what is going on in other countries and share our knowledge. The floor to Ramona.
Hello, everybody. I'm very glad to be the moderator for our first day of collaboration. I want also to add that in Romania, we called the month of March the month of women, which is dedicated to women. So besides spring is coming, we also celebrate all the women. And I think this topic concerning gender is also very appropriate to this. I will tell a few things about our first guest, Professor Oriana Palushi. So I will read a few lines about her research and teaching activity. So she was full professor of English at the University of Naples until 2019. And now she is the director of the School of Languages and Mediation in Benevento. She has published extensively on a number of literary, cultural, linguistic, and environmental topics related to English, American, and Canadian studies. She has recently edited a number of books, like Translating Virginia Woolf, 2012. Then, along with one of her colleagues, she wrote Wastelands, Eco-Narratives in Contemporary Cultures in English. Then in 2016, she wrote a book, Green Canada. Then a year later, she wrote a book about Alice Munro and the anatomy of the short story. While the most recent of her books in 2018 has a very intriguingly titled, a nice titled book, Miss Man, which is a question, Languaging Gender Books. Congratulations for your activity, and let's listen to your presentation, which I'm very sure that is a very interesting one. You have the floor.
Thank you, Ramona. Mihalia. Okay. Mihaila. So we learned some pronunciation as well today. All right. So let's start, and thanks everyone for being here. Okay. A brief outline of what I'm going to do today: definition of keywords, gender and performativity, gender as communicative process, then grammar and gender. The second part of my talk today will be on translating English nouns of common gender and professions. The second part, translating literary text. So you see, it's always divided by two. Okay. And see if we can work on translating pronouns. As you understand, this is only introductory, but there are some points I want to make before going on and be clear, be sure the students know what we are speaking about. First, essential context, gender and performativity. All bodies are gendered from when they are born. Gender is not something one is something one does. The basic book, I'll be quoting only 2 books here because it's no use quoting so many and then students don't know which books to choose. The essential book here on the concept of gender and performativity is Judith Butler, Gender Trouble, 1999, or the other book she has written. But let's just start with Gender Trouble, in which she speaks of gender and performativity. Gender is performatively constituted. What about gender and language, what we are interested? Gender identity are constructed by language. So language gives the gender. It's not that language does gender, but language, and we will see discourse, do gender, okay? So the process of the link between gender and language. The second part, the second book I'm going to quote, I'm going to work with is Suzanne Romain, Communicating Gender. Gender is linked with communicating the gender through language. I'm not speaking of gender from a social linguistic point of view or a social point of view. I'm going to speak here today about gender and linguistics, okay? So let's see what we mean by gender as a communicative process. We communicate gender, as we have seen, but how do we do it? We do it with words, okay? We communicate gender with words. We construct gender through discourse. But in doing so, we display ourselves as gendered bodies or gendered beings. I want you to follow these concepts. We will be using them, all right? Okay. What about women's oppression in discourse? If we are represented through language, how has language represented gendered bodies? Women's oppression and discourse are central to what has been going on in the last century, let's say, and in some countries is still going on. What am I trying to highlight here? that there is a strong link between women's oppression and discourse. What happens is that through language, in context, in social situations, linguistic competence goes together with communicative competence. Just check the examples you have in a dictionary on certain terms, and you will see that they are biased. And women's oppression is not only through, you know, when we speak of women's bodies being violated, it is a social construct, a linguistic social construction through what? Through how we perceive women. What I'm trying to underline is that if women's oppression has deep linguistic roots, it's in language, all representations of any group are embedded first in language. This concept is a key concept. How we speak is connected to how we work or how we do gender. What about stereotypes? When we speak, when we write, we display, we activate stereotypes. What are stereotypes? For the students, definition, a working definition. Gender stereotypes are sets of beliefs about the attributes of men or women. Men are stronger and more aggressive, women are passive. We can have a long list here of stereotypes, the attributes. I was checking for some pictures to use, some images to use, you know, for boys and girls and so forth for this PowerPoint. And what came out was that the girls were all pretty and in skirts, and the boys were all aggressive. So you go and check them, but we could add here a whole series. Women don't know how to drive, men are better drivers, and so forth and so on, all right? So when we see or hear about gender, we activate stereotypes even without being aware of it. Anyway, language is always ambiguous and depends on context and interpretation. We know that. We can't speak about language and gender without bearing in mind that language is ambiguous. And for interpretation, we need to check the context. What about the worldview, gender and worldview? The gender systems, we're speaking of Europe, if we speak of Asia or China or, I don't know, African countries, I mean, they have different worldviews. Let's speak of our worldview, European, generally speaking, worldview. Provide a worldview that is gendered. Is gendered, but the basic perspective is that in being gendered, male, female, it is also providing the ideological construction that what is female is inferior or other. Generally speaking, the semantic space languages assigned to women is negatively charged by beliefs that's the worldview, about women, or what women are like, or how they should behave. I generally say that the first reform we need in a new worldview is to change the books that they produce for primary school. The first change in the prospect of gender and worldview is the change. We must change books in primary school. I don't know the books in Romania, but I have had training also in the fields of didactics and the field of pedagogy. And the first thing you will see, the father is reading the newspaper, the mother is cooking. That is a worldview. And it is translated into language. He is performing what? She is doing what? Who is taking care of the children? And so forth. We start from the worldview, and the worldview is represented through gendered bodies. In writing, think of advertisements. How there is an ideological construction of woman as other. Why do we need all these advertisements with naked bodies? If the woman is not showing her legs, or she's not sexy, that is an ideological construction of a specific worldview in which the woman is an object. Okay, now let's go to our second step, that is grammar and gender, which I'm interested in today. In some languages, gender is a central grammatical category. In others, it's not so important. I've checked Romanian, so help me here. I've checked it. It's not a question of classifying things according to their sex, but to provide what is called a grammatical system that links nouns with the words that modify them. I need all this then to speak of what happens in gender in translation. Okay. European languages, except English, deal with gender as a grammatical category. Languages such as French, German, Spanish, Romanian, I've had it Romanian, have 2 or 3 so-called genders: masculine, feminine, and neutral. By the way, I checked the Romanian plurals for neutral nouns. It's wonderful. It's one. I'll leave Ramona to speak about it. It's not a question of just noun classes, but I want to know if the nouns just refer to males or females, or must be masculine, feminine. But we'll see here what happens when gender is a grammatical category, or in English where gender is something specific. And we see that when we have grammatical gender, it's not just a question of nouns, but what changes are articles, adjectives, other modifiers that must change and be marked accordingly. Here we have people studying French. If you don't mark it accordingly, you don't speak French. I mean, English, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because it's a neutral language. There's no gender modifiers. It's not marked genderly, only in some ways, okay? This includes pronouns because I'm interested in pronouns today, okay? So, modifiers, think about it. You say, but we have done this through grammar. No, this is another approach. The approach is through gender. Why do we have modifiers? And what happens to these modifiers when you're passing from a language, an ungendered language, English, to a gendered, grammatically gendered language. All right? These are some of the mistakes the students make in Italy, by the way. Okay. English has a natural gender, or if you want, is an ungendered language. Nouns that English speakers refer to as she are in fact biological feminine in the real world. They include women, girls, female animals, but not objects such as houses, TVs, and so on. They include he, they include men and boys and so on, male animals and so on. So English, being a natural gender language, relies on the criteria of humanness and biological sex. Whatever you learn in English, you have to understand there are exceptions. Any rule in English doesn't stay the same. There are always exceptions. As a matter of fact, in English, when you say, well, how are you going to call boats and ships? You know, boats and ships, English has dominated the world through ships because of travel and so on, and ships are female. Boats, cars, and nation. I've been working on hurricanes. Up to recently, they were all female. Stereotype, hurricane destroys, women is alien, is other. Hurricanes, up to recently, now we have some male names, hurricanes tend to be female. Hurricane Katrina. Huh? Anyone remember Hurricane Katrina or other names of hurricanes? Okay. And they are referred to in English as she, as the ships are she, because you understand why. All right. Okay. So English, when you are translating from English into French, from English into Romanian, from English into Italian, you have a problem. English has a neutral gender, a natural gender, ungendered. It's an ungendered language, and you have to translate it into male and female when they're not male and female in the text, or their natural gender in the text. All right. From English into Italian, we have a lot of this, a lot of problems in the transportation, as I call it, the bridging the gap between the two different grammatical systems on gender. Okay, so natural gender system, English, we understand that, and we've understood why. Okay, we have the grammatical gender system, that is the languages in Italian, French, German, Spanish, Romanian. All right. So keep this in mind. What is the difference between English from a grammatical gender point of view, from grammar and gender? English is a natural gender system. English has a natural gender system, and while, sorry, not and, somebody please, your audio. Thank you. Thank you. While many other languages have a grammatical gender center, and it's true, in translation, they are more complex to translate because students must be aware of that English is a natural gender system. By the way, that's one of the reasons, because English is easier to understand, to learn at a basic level always, than Italian, German, Romanian, Spanish, Italian, all right? Okay. Well, you know, they have consequences. Also through the way we organize our thought processes. We said what is perceived and classified as feminine carries generally negative connotations. It could be marked with sex-specific endings or by associations with other concepts having negative meanings. Here we can have a whole list of associations with concepts that in the female have negative meaning. Here I don't have time, but if you speak of connotation, you will see that many adjectives connotate only with female nouns. Okay. I'll just give you an example. We have, I'll show it to you afterwards, but I want to anticipate here. If you think of somebody not happy, in Italian, triste or infelice. Infelice, if you go on the dictionaries, all the examples are la donna infelice, never the male who is not happy. Okay, this is what I mean, that association with other concepts. No systematic work has been done yet on these principles. That is the choosing of just example phraseology in connotation. I've checked connotation dictionaries on phraseology and so on in Italian and in English, obviously, and you will see that stereotypes of what I was saying of women's oppression or negative connotation is true. Please, I don't have time to go through this, but if you go and check your own examples, you will see that I am right. It's not a question of being right. Unfortunately, I would like it to be otherwise. All right. I would like it to be otherwise. But as we have, you know, we're teaching languages, we have always used dictionaries, monolingual dictionaries, bilingual dictionaries. Did we ever think of the gender of the phraseology and how adjectives, for example, connote, you know, negatively? Certain words are connected to to the female world. Okay, think of powerless and so forth. All right. Okay. Attention must be drawn to gender in grammatical gender because you have to know it. As I said before, how can you write in French or in Italian if you don't know the endings? No way, you can't. And students, you know, from English have make a lot of mistakes in translation or even in speaking. I'm giving here an example. What about English-speaking feminists who can't rely on the gender endings? How can they? They've invented certain textual strategies. I'm here giving you the example of the invention or renaming of words instead of history, his story, his story. They've invented her story, her land, and so forth, because they don't have the endings and you can't draw on gender as in other languages. We could have other examples here. Let's go on. Okay. Italian. Italian is a grammatical language which expresses the sexual category of person and of objects through the final ending, which is male or female. I put it in Italian here for our for the Italian students. L'italiano è una lingua grammaticale che esprime il genere sessuale delle persone e degli oggetti attraverso le desinenze maschile o femminile. Here I have la luna, il cielo, le stelle. Maria è stata. So remember the slide before. You need to gender on a grammatical level has consequences. You have to know the gender of what you're speaking about and use it. Students who don't know the language well in Italian make these mistakes, okay? Okay. Notice the skirt, the gender icon, okay? When you go to the bathrooms, you always have la signora, women with a dress. I haven't worn a dress for some years. I could put on a dress. So that I'm not a woman, because I don't I don't fit in the stereotype, all right? Okay. While English is a neutral language with no productive gender markers, Italian is a language with grammatical gender. I'm summing up here, drawing attention to gender through agreement on a syntactic level. So this is what, summing up the first part of my paper. So let's go to the second part of my paper. That's a bit of introduction of theory. Let's go to practice. Here again, you see even children, same stereotypes. And look at the colors, please. All right. Let's start with an easy part, easier at least. That is translating English nouns of common gender. If you open an Italian newspaper, you find these mistakes. I'll show you how, okay? Common gender in English, that is, the same noun is used for both male and female. Notice the image here, okay? The long hair, obviously, the long hair. Okay. Is this because they are equal? Obviously not. Obviously not. No, it's just nouns that refer to either a male or a female gender, all right? Okay. I have a list here of English nouns of common gender. Friend, person, student, child, teacher, lover, traveler, baby, colleague, professor, partner. In Italian, when you have to translate baby, you have a lot, you have to gender it. There's no way. Child, you have to gender it. What happens? That generally speaking, the gender is male. I don't know where they wrote it. They didn't, but the tendency is when you're speaking to a crowd, as I am speaking to a crowd of virtual people today, I must speak in the, using male, the male, even if I know that the majority of people, students, teachers, common gender, are female. What am I going to say? Gli studenti o le studentesse? You generally say gli studenti e I professori. They're not always the same in gender languages. Finally, in Italy, after women's movements, liberation movement on different levels, we finally get the president, our president, to say, buongiorno, signori e signore. Finally, my husband says it's not a conquest. Listen, we have never been named. I don't agree to be called signore. Just one thing. 20 years ago, I was teaching at the University of Torino. We go, my colleague and I were young scholars. We go in a bookshop. We go to a bookshop. We're ordering the books for our courses. Buongiorno, professore. Buongiorno, signora. Okay, okay. This still happens to me. This still happens to me, all right? My husband is professore, I am signora. So you see what I mean? It's all teacher or professor in English. And when we translate it in Italian, it's not just a question of translation, it's a question of, if it's female, we have to lower down the scale. All right? And this happens also in translation. I've gone through a series of translation into Italian. I've done a little bit in French, and I've seen that in many cases, for instance, the title of novels is in masculine form, even if we understand after reading that it deals with a feminine protagonist. Obviously, the importance of the context, which ought to provide the gender, obviously, but sometimes we have to get there. We don't know. If I say, hello to all of you, teachers and students, in English, it's everyone. In Italian, buongiorno a tutti, ringrazio i professori e gli studenti presenti. No, because the masculine includes everyone. Who said so? Why not buongiorno studentesse e studenti? Last Monday I was teaching, and in my class there was no male student. Buongiorno studentesse, buongiorno studenti. That's what generally happens. Anyway, in the English, we need the context to understand the gender, okay? The exception, and when we have a third person pronouns and adjectives which are declined, okay? This is always English. In English, one of the problems in translation from English into another language is that gender, we have the gender of its referent. Kate and John live together in his house. The house is his. Kate is not the owner, by the way. Kate is not the owner. I want to have Kate and John live together in her house, but we don't generally have it in sentences to translate. Italian, when we translate it into Italian, it's not the referent that we're interested in, but the grammatical gender of the noun. Sorry, there's a mistake here, of the noun. Kate e Jane vivono insieme a casa sua. Sua, his house, but in Italian, in accordance with the noun casa. Okay? But again, you see how gender is biased, even in this simple sentence I'm working with, okay? Anyway, in English, we see that pronouns are the referent here. In Italian, it isn't. So what I'm trying to show the students is that when we translate, we must know the structures of one language and the structures of the other language, referring to gender. Second instance, I mean, common words in English. Many of them are connected to professions. Here we can have a long list of professions: medical professions, nurse, doctor, surgeon, chemist, mayor, prime minister, banker, capitalist, translator, writer, artist, dancer, singer, reporter, architect, lawyer, engineer, astronaut, tycoon, whoever spoke of tycoon for a woman. And not that we want it to be like that, but you understand that we don't. The book is translated by, the translator is, they're all male. Did you know that? how do you say in some of these cases in English, you add the word woman, woman translator, a woman writer, woman artist, woman dancer, and so on. What happens in the translation into Italian is that in Italian, they're not common gender. So in the passage from English, which is common gender, to Italian, which is not common gender, it's something different. Even in newspapers, you have woman writer, scrittrice donna. We already have scrittrice. Why would you translate scrittrice donna? English needs woman writer, woman artist. Artista, we have the Italian with the article, l'artista, la artista. We don't need la artista donna. This is the influence, you know, of not knowing that one language has common gender and the other doesn't. Thinking of biased, doctor. When you hear doctor, you're thinking male doctor. Why male doctor? Who said so? Nurse, la infermiera, with all the jokes on infermiere. I have a riddle here for you. Okay, let me get to the, okay, I have an example here. I was at a conference and the professor next to me, it was in Italian. They said, here I have an important book, a writer's diary, translated into Italian as Il diario di uno scrittore. Il diario di uno scrittore. It was a conference on Virginia Woolf. Il diario di uno scrittore. It should be il diario di una scrittrice. They still, they've translated for years as il diario di uno scrittore. Writer, common gender in the masculine, even if it was Virginia Woolf's diary. Okay. A male gendered world. Here I have one sentence with 1, 2, 3 different translations. The teacher cried, "Students, please be silent." L'insegnante gridò, "Studenti, state zitti." La maestra gridò, "Studentesse, state zitte." Il maestro gridò, "Studenti e studentesse, state zitti." So you see that, I mean, they're all right. I mean, you have you need the context, but you see that you would never have il maestro gridò for students, please be silent. Studenti e studentesse, state zitti. Okay. Now I have a riddle for you. Okay, so that the students understand how language is biased and translation is as well. Okay, riddle, the doctor and the son. A father and son were in a car accident where the father was killed. The ambulance brought the son to the hospital. He needed immediate surgery. In the operating room, a doctor came in and looked at the little boy and said, "I can't operate on him. He is my son." Who is the doctor? Answer, please. A student, give me the answer. Who is the doctor? Who is the doctor? Somebody answer, please.
The mother of the son.
The mother, yes, because a woman can be a surgeon, all right? But try this riddle also in Italian or in English if you want with some friends of yours, and you will see that they don't understand. They will say, "Oh, it's wrong." So try it. Thank you. All right, let's go on. Okay. 1 minute pause and we go to the last part of the part of the lesson which concerns translating literary text and gender. And as we said, we're speaking of pronouns in this lesson, okay? And seeing how they behave in communicating gender through translation. All right. I'm going to give you two examples, one on the first person narration. I'm sorry, there's a mistake here. And the other one on translating pronouns in a short story. Okay, my first example. A first person narration. I've chosen two feminist books, okay? The first one is Written on the Body by Jeanette Winterson, 1992. In Italian, Scritto sul corpo, translated by Giovanna Marrone. You will see that both texts I'm going to speak about have been translated by women. Okay. This is a short extract from Winterson, who is explaining what she wanted to do in her experimental postmodern novel. Quote, all my work is experimental in that it plays with form, refuses a traditional narrative line, and includes the reader as a player, postmodern text. By that, I mean that the reader has to work with the book. In the case of Written on the Body, the narrator has no name, so we don't know the gender. Is assigned no gender, because in first person narration, is age unspecified and highly unreliable. I wanted to see how much information I could leave out, especially the kind of character information that is routine and, as we have seen, is biased, and still hold a story together. So what I'm interested here is, I'm just going to quote and show you some passages in translation. The narrator has no name, so you don't know the gender of the protagonist. You can do so in English through the first person narration. And eliminating, as we saw, pronouns and adjectives which are declined, okay? Is assigned no gender and is highly unreliable. Let's see what what she has done in some passages I will be analyzing with you. As we know, the first thing a translator should do is to read the text and decode the whole text before actually translating it. In this case, we have an unnamed narrator, jumbles up the reader's expectations on sex roles and sexual relationships. When there is a first-person narrator, sooner or later, the gender of the protagonist is revealed, if not directly by the protagonist, but by other characters who are speaking about the protagonist. What Winterson is doing is testing gender prejudices and presuppositions in the construction of the self and the other. When we read this passage, we assume that the I is male. giving heterosexuality for granted. She eliminates the gendered possessiveness here so that we don't understand the gender of the protagonist. Let's look at this passage and what can be done in Italian. I'm the translator and I have the problem of not revealing the gender of the protagonist. If the gender is ambiguous in the original text, I have to do so in my translation. The point is, as we said at the beginning, English is an ungendered, a natural language. Italian is not. Italian is gendered. So we'll have to look for strategies in order not to disambiguate, okay, reveal, okay, sorry, reveal the gender of the protagonist because the writer wants to do so. Okay. If I translated poor me, povera me, povera, povera is feminine, povero, me is male. So we go to infelice, which is words with the E in Italian are both male and female. So these adjectives are both female and male. So this is a good solution instead of saying povero me or povera me. Me infelice. Crogiolarsi è il massimo di eccitazione sessuale per i depressi. Per i depressi in generale, in general. We have a problem with the third passage here because we have her all the time. Remember what we said about possessives or adjectives previously in English. I considered her, but here it's insisting on her. We have it 6 times here. I considered her. I didn't love her, and I didn't want to love her. I didn't desire her. Sorry, this one I missed. And I could not imagine desiring her. These were all points in her favor. Okay, so we know that the loved one is a she. How are we going to translate all these her? Italian as a language does not like repetitions. And we'll see what we can be doing with her and so on. Cominciai a pensarci sul serio. Non l'amavo, io non amavo lei. L'amavo is, we don't know if it's amavo, l'amavo, lui o lei, e non volevo però amarla, lei, non la desideravo e non riuscivo a immaginare di desiderarla. Erano tutti punti in favore di chi? Favore di lei, in suo favore. Remember what we said before in Italian. So, another example, just here, I had survived shipwrecked. You have to find a form in Italian that does not reveal the gender. And in order not to reveal the gender, we try to use forms in Italian that are not gendered. As in this case, ero reduce da un naufragio e mi piaceva la mia nuova isola, and so forth. Okay. I found this passage quite interesting. I in Italian is, I was rigorous, the form, the nominal form is gendered in Italian. Again here, if we go to the E form, inflessibile, ero rigorosa, ero rigoroso. We're revealing the gender. I mean, I chose this example because we're playing with language, all right? Showing you that the translator should be aware. Up to some years ago, this would have just been, it wouldn't have been translated, obviously, this sort of book, but it would be ero rigoroso, ero rigorosa. That's not the text. The text here, the gender awareness here, and as I said, the writer is insisting on it. The writer is insisting on the non-gendered protagonist. Ero inflessibile. What was that word beginning with B? I leave it here with N because it's you're bored. And here it is, sei annoiato, annoiata. And so here we have a change. We have a noun instead of a verb. Noia, ecco di cosa si tratta, disse uno dei miei amici. Dei miei amici o delle mie amiche? I don't know here. Okay, I think I would accept both. But in Italian, you would always have dei miei amici general. Is it, if we use the male gender here for the friends, are we already choosing? Disse uno dei miei amici a una delle mie amiche. Is it just the male gender emphasizing here the male gender, or are we choosing that the friends are male? I protested with all the fervor of a teetotaler caught glancing at a bottle. Even here, protestai con l'ardore di un astemio. Non protestai come se fossi, teetotaler is gendered, astemio, astemia. So here we added something to the translation, to l'ardore di un astemio in general here. Or we could have done something else maybe. Protestai come un astemio o protestai come una astemia. We have a problem in revealing the gender. L'ardore di un astemio in general or l'ardore di una astemia. Even here we're choosing the masculine. Just showing you that Italian makes choices even if you don't want to. I was content. I was depressed. I was content. Provavo un senso di appagamento. Here you need a periphrasis. Ero contento, ero contenta. You see that the periphrasis here makes it possible to keep the ungendered that we have in English. I was content, avevo trovato, then it goes on. I was content, had settled down, avevo trovato una sistemazione. Non mi ero sistemata, mi ero sistemato. So you see how this, in translating this passage, the translator has a hard job. As I said, I chose it because when we have an English first person narration, the I are ungendered, and we also should remember that adjectives are invariable in English. In Italian, adjectives are variable, and in many languages, the gendered languages, what's to do? As you have seen, we have used adjectives that are both male and female, ending in "i", infelice, and so forth, inflessibile, reduce, and so on. So this is possible if you are translating and you are aware of the differences between natural gender and gendered language. Okay. Second example, we still have time. How much time do I have left, Ramona?
We're almost there. We almost have an hour. So
Can I go through this last example?
yes, absolutely, please.
Okay. I think that being a short story and speaking about dolls, as you understand, the students will like this short story. Okay. It's a short story by Irish writer Edna O'Brien. It's collected in Returning Tales 1982, La Bambola in Rose d'Irlanda, translated by Edmonda Bruscella. Okay. So just the context. Every year, there is a doll, and we have every Christmas, the young girl gets a doll. And so you say doll, doll. In Italian, doll e bambola. Bambola, okay? La bambola. It è neutro, it. It would come on the evening bus. It, in the beginning of the story. All right? All right. When we read the short story, we see that the dolls are of both sexes. In the short story, once the male dolls are introduced, in Italian bambolotto, the female dolls shift from it to she. They were of both sexes. I'm just showing you the what happens in the story, all right? And getting to my point. They were of both sexes and so on. A creature of something. I used to feel for her, not it, her, when my sisters picked her up clumsily to make her flatter her eyelashes. The doll is used. We have the shift from it to her and she in the story. Her eyes. Now, how are we going to translate that? Let's see. So you see, she, and so on. In the short story, pronouns play an essential role in the binary opposition between subject and object, it and she, animate and inanimate. And we see that we have a sort of upgrading from the doll object, inanimate, to animate, coinciding in some way, the doll, with the she, the girl, the woman. The plot is concentrated on the seventh doll. Remember, each year they had a doll. It's on the seventh doll, which is the representation of a princess, and thus of the woman the protagonist should become. How are we going to translate all her eyes? And so I'm just giving you, just to illustrate here, I'll go to a translation passage now, okay? Okay. The translator here, second passage, if the doll has become a she, the girl, the protagonist, has become an it. So reversal. the teacher calls the girl, the protagonist, unnamed protagonist, as you understand, an it, as if she were a doll. The translation is quella, which is not it. My translation, instead of quella, would have been essa, giving it, perché quella means that one over there. Essa means it's an object. Essa. It's awful in Italian. I assure you that saying it has a hole in its sock. The girl has, you can't say the girl has a hole in its sock. Non puoi dire la ragazza ha un buco nella calza, nelle calze. So, essa ha le calze bucate, oppure essa non indossa una giacca adatto ancora, essa ha il quaderno macchiato. I want you to reflect on it. There is that strategies in translate. Why? Because if I just translate the girl has a hole in that, we're not translating this short story in which the writer, Edna O'Brien, is reversing the pronouns, making the doll she, the princess, that she has, the protagonist, the unnamed protagonist, not become, and the teacher making the girl it. Do you understand that? When I said in translation, you have decoding and then recoding in another language. In this case, if you miss it, it's not the same short story. I mean, gender issues are essential. Okay. So when we have I, the protagonist speaking about herself, we have no problem. I'll just skip this part. Okay. What happens to the doll? The teacher confiscates the doll, imprisons the little girl, that she is not anymore the teacher. The girl manages to go and see her confiscated doll and says, and if dolls can age, it certainly cannot. It certainly had. At the end of the story, after the teacher dies, the pronouns become the proper ones, maybe. Gray and molded, the dress and cloak are as a shroud. And I thought, if I was to pick her up, she would disintegrate. The doll is still a she for her because she has not, the protagonist is not, is still identifying with the object. Let's see the translation. Lì nella vetrinetta strapiena c'è la mia bambola confiscata e se è vero che le bambole possono invecchiare, lei è invecchiata certamente. Lei è invecchiata certamente. It has it's an object here. It's shifting it and so even here, say lei is personifying this doll still. Here it should be essa è invecchiata certamente. Why? Because it here is it. The narrating voice is shifting between she and it. She still doesn't know if she's an object or a subject. Grigi e ammuffiti, l'abito e il mantello sembrano un lenzuolo funebre. In quel momento ho pensato, se la prendessi in mano, if I was to pick her up, she would disintegrate. Se la prendessi in mano, si sbriciolerebbe. Quella, is it sufficient? I don't know. I'll leave it to the translators. Se prendessi in mano la bambola, or her up, prendessi in mano, se prendessi in mano essa, which is horrible in Italian, I assure you in English as well, we could go on playing with it and she in this this passage. I could say a lot more on it. In conclusion, it is easy to pass from the awareness of translating gender to mechanical obedience to a target-oriented project that wants everything in the mail. Publishing houses don't care of gender. They insist that it should all be in the mail. What I'm saying, second point, not all translators are aware of the weight of the grammar of gender in translation. I just edited a book on the ghost stories of Mary Wilkins Freeman, and all the titles were on, I selected all stories on female ghosts, the majority of them, and the lost ghost, the gentle ghost, they're all translated with the male. I wrote to the translator and said, you should be translating gender. She replied, I said so to the publisher and he said no. So, un tenero fantasma, una tenera fantasma, I fantasmi are all male. Who told you so? Okay. Ghosts are all male. It is not true. There's a long tradition of female ghosts, and I'm using this final metaphor. Or you translate as if you were a doll, target-oriented project, or as if you were a ghost. Women translators, translating gender is still that of ghosts, female ghosts though. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this interesting lecture. I will take it from here. Ramona has some connection issues. You raised some very important questions, and it is related to a much debated topic nowadays everywhere in the world. Claudia will agree with me that it was a historical event in France when they published La Féminisation des Professions.
Absolutely.
It was historical because you would address a director in masculine rather than in feminine. Yes. It was more formal, more linguistically correct. You wouldn't dare to think of addressing someone la directrice. And in Romanian, it's quite the same. I would say that we have natural nouns, but in terms of pronouns, we wouldn't have an equivalent for it. And looking through your examples, if I suppose correctly that infelice means unhappy.
Yes.
Well, you couldn't translate that in Romanian without marking the gender. Mm-hmm. So it would be nefericită or nefericit, okay, like in feminine or masculine. Yeah. It wouldn't be a neutral decision for that translation. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you would need to use a noun.
Sure.
In order to translate correctly the context, you would say an unhappy event or something like that.
Sure, sure.
Not
sure.
to mention the gender. And the doll in Romanian is a feminine noun. And I don't think in any case it refers to a male. So it's a feminine noun. So,
obviously, dolls are female. Females play with dolls.
Yes.
But in this short story, Edna O'Brien was a terrific writer, speaks of male dolls. And so you should speak of male dolls. And then she changes the the reference to the female dolls as she. So there are male dolls in this story. You imagine this story if the translator translated il bambolotto invece della bambola.
So obviously, a translator needs to be aware and to have good knowledge of both languages.
Yes.
In order to convey correctly the intended message.
Sure.
So
Yes.
I would open the floor for questions now.
Okay.
If students have any questions. I know that my students from Cluj-Napoca are watching through the share screen. So I told them that if they have any question, they may write the question in the chat and I'll read them. So go ahead. It's your time now. Okay.
I think that they all have in mind some examples of what we've been saying. So if they want to share with us, you know.
And irrespective of gender, they are very shy.
Yes, I know. Because they're female. Because in our society, they've taught us not to speak up.
Not to speak up.
I'm sorry. I think that we female professors should have first a course on how to ask questions in public because they're not used to speaking in public. So.
Okay, so I'm trying to fight this stereotype, okay?
Okay.
But you're not a student, Michaela.
Yes, but I'm in the female gender, so come on. That's right. No, I would like to congratulate Professor Palucci on this very interesting presentation. I think that Professor Palucci is always able to enhance our level of awareness. I mean, I think that everyone is aware that English is a neutral language and that we may have problems when translating into Italian, for example. But I think that none of the students here had the opportunity to think about the strategies that we can implement when, for example, as Professor Palucci said, we want to keep the gender secret, as in the case that she provided. So I think that this was very interesting. Every lesson that Professor Palucci has is always accompanied by practical examples. And I think this is key in order to really understand what theory is important for. Theory is important because it gives us the strategies to implement in our translation processes. As you may know, I am a medical translator. So when I translate, for example, things about or questions about endometriosis, which is a typical female problem, you know, translating is a piece of cake because it's just the females. That's easy. But, you know, endometriosis is just one of the few conditions that only affect one gender and not the other. So mainly when we translate about medicines, we always have to keep in mind these. And so it's not an easy job. It's a matter of being aware of all the problems we have and knowing the strategies that we can implement. So I really thank Professor Palucci for these examples. They really gave me, I'm sure also the other students, solutions and food for thought on how to find solutions in our translation practice. Thank you.
Thank you. And the examples mentioned with women writers or women translators and this English influence of European countries that are translating those terms, it may be seen also in Romanian because we also have the feminine for writers, which should be enough. For expressing the fact that the writer we are talking about is a she.
It's a she, yeah.
But we would also translate this English term of women writers. And this happens a lot in the legal discourse as well. And with all the European directives and the huge amount of legislation that is quickly translated into 28 languages, it brought with it a lot of foreignness and terms that are not correctly expressed from the national point of view. And you know that we have a lot of doublets and so on and so forth. So this foreign influence when translating globally used terms is recognizable both in Italian and in Romanian, I would say.
Okay. As I said, if you open an Italian newspaper, la donna scrittrice, you find it everywhere. Why la donna scrittrice if we have scrittrice? It's already gendered.
Yes.
And this is I mean, I teach English, but this doesn't mean I know the difference between Italian and English. I mean, it's a calque. It's a mistranslation. It's because they are not aware that English is is an ungendered language. Italian is a gendered language. That's the whole point. But I could give you other examples. But referring to what you said before, there's a lot of debate in Italy going on if to adapt the new careers in Italian or not. There are two schools. Some terms are accepted, some terms are not. Avvocato, avvocatessa is accepted. Sindaco, sindachessa is not accepted. I mean, we have this new coinage, but it will take years to accept the female of it. We can't say in Italian l'avvocato donna or l'avvocato femmina. It doesn't work like that. L'avvocato, and then in context we understand that è un'avvocatessa. Avvocatessa is used in Italian now. Il medico, la medichessa, Michela, il medico, but we have la dottoressa, but not medichessa. Il medico e il dottore, ma abbiamo la dottoressa, which in Italian does not imply that you're in the field of medicine. La dottoressa is someone in Italy who is a professor, but dottoressa, not a doctor of medicine. So that's why you don't have dottoressa now means dottoressa in the field of medicine, but it didn't start like that. Doesn't mean medico. That's the whole thing, vero, Michela?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's it.
Some professions we have in the female and are accepted, but others where they're just coining them, but they're not used, and there's, you know, some jokes on them, you know. But I'm sure that all the students, is there any male student present? We have Lorenzo. Lorenzo, ci sei? Lorenzo?
Sì.
Lorenzo, what do you think about this lesson? Do you agree that we tend to use male gender in speaking?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's very interesting because it is a fact that concerns every translator I think, in the world.
Sure, sure, in different languages. Sure. I insisted only on pronouns and nouns today because I wanted to do something that is not done all the time, and I had to choose a field. But we could go on in other fields and show how it works. But do you agree that some examples in writing in English or in Italian from the very beginning are biased, that they are not gender neutral, in the sense that infelice, unhappy, triste, is generally used with females and not with males.
Yeah.
Go and check in your
Sure.
dictionary. Go and check unhappy or infelice in your dictionary. You'll see it will be in the phraseology, you'll have it with females and not males.
Una vita infelice, una donna infelice.
Obviously, obviously. Hai sentito mai un uomo infelice?
Mai. Doesn't not collocate.
No, it doesn't. Grazie, Lorenzo.
Nulla.
Anyone else? Qualche studente delle superiori? No.
Okay, then. So we will close up this first day. Remember that we have other 9 online lectures, all of them 11 a.m. CET, meaning 11 in Italy, noon in Romania.
Yes.
Every day with the same credential, same ID for online meeting and password. Tomorrow it's our reply in gender terms, a lecture by Ramona Mihailo. Then Wednesday, Thursday, we are talking French literature, 20th century almost, and then Friday is devoted to Italian literature. This is this week. Thank you for joining. We are really impressed by the number of attendants, and see you all tomorrow. Bye.
Grazie a tutti. Arrivederci.
Bye.
Thank you for participating.
Thank you, goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci a tutti.
Arrivederci.
Grazie. Grazie a tutti gli studenti e le studentesse.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.